Well, a notebook and notebook paper seem to be high on the list of things for get back to school, so stay tuned and see how fun and easy it is to make a notebook with paper in it for the dolls for their back to school supplies. Well, the first thing we need to do to make our notebook is to find something stiff enough to use. I'm using just a cracker box. I use a lot of these for different things. They're great. So we're going to start by cutting a straight edge here where we've got room to work. I'll save that for another purpose. And now we need to cut. From there we need to go up. We need 4 inches total. So I need a right angle here. Now I'm going to cut off a 4-inch strip. Make sure I'm still on the Now, we need 2 pieces that are 4 by 3 7/8. So let's see if we can get, I'm not sure if we'll get all our pieces off of this piece or if I have to go cut another one. There's 7/8. I'm actually going to turn this over so I can tell exactly where the edge of my cardboard is, because it's really hard to see the gray cardboard against this white mat, especially from the angle I'm at. Normally I would be looking right down at this, and I recommend when you cut yours that you have your head directly over what you're trying to cut. Alright, so we need another piece that size. That's our front and back for our notebook. Now we need 1 piece that is 4 by 3/4 of an inch. And if you want to make a notebook that's a different size, you know, as far as thickness, then you can adjust these measurements. Especially this one. It doesn't have to be 3/4 of an inch. It can be wider or narrower, depending on how thick of a notebook you feel like your students are going to need. Now we need to cut some cardstock, and I've got this piece of printed cardstock, but I made one earlier out of a plain color. Whoops, out of a plain color. So it's just up to you what you want. I recommend you make sure that this doesn't have a top and a bottom. It's just easier to deal with. Now we need to cut a strip 4.5 inches. And I'm going to start by the width of this knife. Now I need to cut this to be 9 3/4, and this ruler is 9 1/2. So I'm going to actually mark a little tiny mark here at 9 inches, and then I'm going to go 3/4 of an inch more. Line up my 3/4 inch mark with that, making sure everything is still straight. And now we are going to score this. Alright, off camera I scored this at 1/4 inch on each edge, on the 2 long edges, 3/8 of an inch on the 2 short edges. And then from one end I measured over 4 3/8 and then 5 1/4. I'll have these measurements on the blog post. So now it's time, first we're going to fold. And you can adjust these measurements depending on the size notebook you want to make, how thick you want to make it, all that stuff. Now we're just going to fold it up. Now we're going to take our pieces that we cut. These are our pieces of cardboard that we cut. And I am going to use some glue stick. Actually, I'm going to put it on this side. We're going to get this down first, and then we're going to do some trimming before we glue the edges down. Try and center this 3/4 inch wide piece. Oh yeah, we're still under camera. In the middle of this space. The space is just a little bit wider than 3/4 of an inch, so you need to center that in there. I like glue stick for this because it holds the paper flat without bubbling. And we want this right up to that 3/8 inch. It will be a little bit away from this crease here. We want this space here so that this will bend, open and close easily. And once again, we are going to put this right up to there. Now, close my glue stick. Use my scissors. I have a horrible feeling with this. Yeah, make sure that your 4-inch piece is going that way. That's right, switch. Yeah, that was right. Okay. Best to make those determinations now rather than later. All right. So now this part that folds up, we're actually not going to cut that. We're going to fold it. Fold that. I forgot it was the other project that we did that. We do want to cut here though. We're going to cut to the fold on these two score lines and just cut out just the tiniest little wedge. Otherwise, if we don't cut this little wedge out here, we are going to have it bunching up when we try to fold it. And I find it's easier if I bend that space just so I can really see where I want to cut. Now, let's pre-fold these ends. And I need glue. Which glue do I have? I still have way too many projects on my table. Alright, I'm going to run a bead of glue. First I'm going to glue this part down. I'm just running a bead of glue all along this area. Any glue that's good for paper will work for this. Tacky glue or whatever. I like this Tombow Mono glue myself. Now, fold these corners down again and fold up on our score line. And I have a whole container of these clips, these binder clips here. And we are going to just pinch that edge down. And this will need to dry before we take these clips off. That one broke. It's the problem with buying these at Dollar Tree. There. I'll have to find that piece. And don't worry about this, we are going to be covering this with another piece of paper. I think I will add the binder clips. I'm just going to continue around the whole piece the same way as I've been doing. I'm going to turn the camera off because this is going to take a while. When this is all clamped and dried, I'll come back. Alright, now the glue has dried overnight, so I'm going to take these off. And now, the only problem with these clamps is it takes forever to get them off again. Okay, now we need a piece of cardstock, and you can use the same cardstock or you could use a contrasting color. I'm going to use the same. I had mismarked one that I'd cut. And what we need to do now is we need to measure exactly how big we want. So this is, our entire thing here is 9 inches by 4 inches. So we want to be just a little bit less than that. So I'm going to go about 3 3/4 by 8 3/4. And there it is. Now, we hope that it fits. You can round the corners if you want to. You don't need to. Make sure that's going to fit. All right. Now, I am going to I'm going to lay it right on top of here. And I'm going to cover this again with glue stick. And I'm laying it on top of here so I don't get glue. If I get glue on here, that's fine. We want more glue there. But I don't have, usually I have a piece of parchment paper or something like that, or wax paper or scratch paper or something, but I'm in the other room from where I normally work today, and I don't have any of that. Now, working quickly before this dries, I'm going to run a bead of glue in this on both of these little, I'll call them a channel, where the between there, because we want to make sure that our paper adheres in there. Now, and yeah, I got a little glue in here. That's okay. It won't hurt anything. And now take something, I'm going to use my bone folder, and I'm going to kind of push this in. And what I'm doing, I'm making sure that this is laying flat. But I want it to go into those spots. And what it does here is fine, that doesn't matter. I like it adhered down, but... And now, you guessed it, we're going to clamp again. Because I want this to be really adhered to our cover. And this will need to set up and dry. This doesn't take very long to dry though. So as soon as I get this all put together, I'm going to get my stuff up for our next step, and I'll be right back. Alright, next we are constructing the part of the notebook that holds the rings to hold the paper. Now obviously this isn't going to be a working binder, but it'll look like it. So we're going to use, for the base, we're using 2 of these jumbo craft sticks. And my intention is to put these measurements into the blog post. If I miss that, yell at me on Facebook or in the comments, and I will add it to the blog post. We need one piece that's 3 3/4 of an inch long. We need 2 pieces that are each 1 1/8 inch long. And we need 2 pieces that are a 1/2 inch long. And what you need to do is lay them out, to make sure you've done your math right, lay them out on your base and make sure you have about 3/8 of an inch left over. I've also taken the end of a craft stick. I marked 2 lines on this piece of cardstock, one at 1 inch and one at a 1/2 inch. I laid this down and traced around it. It doesn't have to be perfectly even. We just want to have approximately a 1/2 inch of this shape sticking over the end of our mechanism here. This will all make sense when it gets together. And these measurements are based on the rings that I've bought and the size I'm making the notebook. You may need to make adjustments. All right, we need clamps and we need tacky glue. So the first thing we are going to do, lay down a bead of tacky glue. We're going to do one end at a time. This, I'm actually going to use my thumb and I'm going to, I should have scored it, but I didn't. We're going to fold it at that 1/2 inch mark because I want that to be folded right there. Now the order you put these on is really important. Now we take a 1/2 inch piece. We're going to line the end of the 1/2 inch piece up with that so the ends are the same. Now we're going to take an 1 1/8 inch piece and we're going to leave a small gap. About that. And we're going to work pretty quickly because we may have to adjust this. Same thing on the other end. Crease this. This is all going to get painted with the spray paint, so it will all look kind of like metal when we're done. Again, the 1/2 inch piece has to go on the end and it has to line up. And then this piece. Okay, we've got bigger gaps here, so I'm going to move this one just a little bit. We want our gaps all approximately the same size. And now we're going to take something and clean that glue out a little bit. Now, clamp this and let it dry. That glue has to set up entirely before we can move on. So I'm going to let my glue dry and then I'll be back. Alright, now this has been set up. Actually, I did this a couple of days ago. I'm having to do this in bits because I've been so busy. So now we are going to put our 3-ring thing on there. And it's not actually going to work like a 3-ring binder, but you'll be able to put paper in and out of it. What I found were these little chain mail rings at the craft store, and they are 15mm aluminum jump rings. These work really well. So I've got, this time, I made one of these the other day. I just used just a regular glue, like I think I had Well Bond on my table. I decided to try an epoxy glue today. I'm thinking it's going to be a little more stable once it's dry. Okay. My problem with this stuff is it's so messy. Now, with this glue, you put it on a surface and you mix it together until it's completely mixed. And now, make sure you know where your opening is on your little ring, because you want those. Alright, nothing like being interrupted. Okay, so we've dipped this in. I've got the opening at the top, and I'm going to put this in here. Now hopefully this will stay. Two more. Ah, it's not staying. Had this same problem with the other glue. This is why I was hoping this would work. Let's try putting a little more glue in there. Let's try filling that channel up pretty thickly. I have a feeling I'm going to have to kind of babysit this as it dries this morning, but that's okay. So I'm kind of filling that channel up a little bit. We're going to paint over this, so, and I'm making the rash assumption that I can paint over the epoxy glue without a problem. Stand up. Scrape some more glue up. Line this one up with that one. Come on. This little step is going to be a little bit on the fiddly side, but that's okay. We can have a few fiddly steps once in a while. Make sure you're happy with where those are. Oops. Kind of got glue in the wrong spot there. Make sure I get the glue where I want it, not somewhere else. Whoops. This is kind of like herding cats. Okay. Now, put this over here where I can keep an eye on it. And that's all we're going to do until that dries. When that gets dry, we'll go on to our next step. Alright, now that our epoxy glue is dry, I mean, it's a little messy, but I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to go paint this. Now, I only had to straighten these up a couple of times yesterday. Well, off and on for about the first half hour or so, but I was just working at the table, so it didn't matter. So I'm going to go paint this with some silver spray paint or nickel, whatever, just something that looks like a silvery color. When it's painted and dry, I'll be back. Alright, this is all painted and dried. My glue shows a lot more on this type of glue than the other glue I used, but I think it's going to hold it more securely, so it's up to you. We're all done. I'll show you the first one I made as a prototype. So next, we need to, well, next we're actually going to cut our paper, and after we cut our paper, we're going to put the holes in the paper, and then we're going to glue this into our notebook, because it's easier in that order. But now that we have a notebook, we need to put paper in it. So, I looked at a lot of different options. I looked at printing off scale notebook paper, and I can do it, but I wanted something that would be easy for you, and you wouldn't have to download a pattern and download the paper and all of that stuff. And then I was at the store looking at the back to school stuff, and they have these little notebooks. These are 99 cents. And yet they're not in scale. The lines aren't in scale, but there's lines on both sides, and they'll work. They'll work just fine. Now, I've already started cutting some because I've already made some for a notebook I made earlier. So I'm going to show you what I did. What I've done is I cut the paper right out of here. I leave it in the notebook. So we're going to cut, I'm going to measure down. I'm measuring always down from the top of the notebook. Cut it 3.5 inches. Oops. And I'm pushing down fairly hard so that I can get it through the paper. And then I'm lining up on this where the paper's attached, and I'm lining up at 2 5/8. And now I'm going to get a container to put these in so I can put them all in the container. I go down however far it cut, about there. And if it's not completely straight, if it's off a little bit, I can trim it with my scissors. Now they won't be rounded on the corners, but that's okay. You can round it with a corner rounder if you want to. I chose not to. And you can cut your cuts in either direction first. Usually I kind of alternate because it's a little less work. And once you've cut a few and you've got some paper in here, you've got a nice easy guide to cut and line up against. that looks pretty good. And always put it in your container the same direction. And now every once in a while I'll come in here and I'll just pull off some of those pieces so they're not in my way. And you're just going to continue with this. However many sheets of paper you think you want for your doll's notebook. You can cut a bunch or you can cut just a few. It's up to you. And you could use other alternatives. You could just cut some plain paper. It's up to you. Oops, that's kind of crooked. I kind of got my ruler twisted here because I'm talking and trying to cut at the same time. There. Trying to lay my ruler down off camera and it's trying to fall off the table. But as you can see, there's a lot of sheets of paper here for just 99 cents. If you have some that does this. Now I like, one of the things, the big advantages to cutting out of one of these is it's held still on this edge. So it's not going anywhere. If I was trying to cut a stack of paper, it would be very difficult. Let's see if it says, it doesn't say anywhere on the back of this that I see how many sheets are in here, but there's a lot. So that's how we that's how we cut our paper. Let me get set up and we will put the holes in this and put it in our notebook. Alright, so now we have our ring set ready. I'm going to get these moved to the side so I can use it. And this is why this is not really usable. You can't take the paper in and out because we have to bend them like that. We have our notebook paper and I'm making a template. Number one, I can check to make sure my cuts are right. Now I've taken the liberty of finding the middle before I turn the camera on. And I'm using just a white Crayola colored pencil. These are really handy. I like to use them if I am working on dark colors because it's much easier to see what I'm doing. There. Both for me and for you. Alright. I'm going to line up this mark with that ring. I'm going to line up this mark. I'm going to mark through. And now I've got an 1/8 inch hole punch. And I'm going to attempt to see where those lines intersect. Now, I'm going to try this on here. Yes, that's going to work. So now, it's a little too wide though. I don't want quite that much space past my holes, I think. I think I should have cut that at an 1/8. Should have marked that at an 1/8 inch. There's my knife I'm looking for. There, that's better. That would be much easier. So now, just take our paper and line this up on the edge. Line it up with our paper. And we punch through. Come on, where is that? Right through the same spot. It would be much easier if I was not showing this on the camera. I'm off a little bit on that. And this is just easier to do now than it will be after this is in the notebook. Once this is put in, it's a little harder to get the paper in it. I'm going to take some more. And I made a lot, like I said earlier, I think I said earlier, I made a lot more paper than I'm going to use in here. One more batch of paper, and then I'm going to glue this into the notebook and let it dry so we can be done with this. I will continue to punch these pages off camera though. But you don't need to watch me punch holes all day. Alright, so that will get us enough paper to put in our notebook for right now. There. Now, we just gently, and this glue does have a little more give than the glue I used on my previous notebook, the one I made for a prototype. All these clips off. Actually did this part. This part's been clipped for like 2 or 3 days because I've been really busy. Alright, there we go. That. Now for this, I'm just going to use some tacky glue. We're going to put glue on the back. Come on. This is what happens when my glue sits right side up for way too long. But I didn't bring my cup. I usually set it upside down into. And I don't like to leave it on its side on my table because then it leaks. Alright, now, here's our spot. Now we're going to kind of make sure that this is right where we want it. I'm okay with a little glue coming out. I will probably wipe up, since there is quite a bit, I will use just a cotton swab and wipe some of that up. But a little glue seepage is not going to hurt anything. So we're going to let this dry, and when this dries, it will be done. Make sure that's kind of halfway centered on there. This is when we can move this. If we don't move it now, get it centered right where we want it, it'll be stuck there. Alright, I'm going to let this dry. I'm going to punch some more holes in some more paper, and when this is all done, I'll come back and we'll look at the finished notebook. Okay, so the glue is pretty much dry now, so now we have a notebook. I made another one the other day, just to make sure of my sizes. This one I used Well Bond glue to glue the rings down, and it didn't make as much of a mess. It made a little mess yet. So use whatever glue you're comfortable with making those rings stay. But that's our notebook, so the dolls can start school and get their homework done. So I hope you enjoyed this project. Be sure and check the blog post for more information and some photos. Check us out on Facebook, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already so you can see what videos we come up with next time. I'll talk to you later. Bye.